Welcome to Truman's Town Hall with your host, Matt Truman.
Hello. This is Matt Truman. Thank you for downloading the podcast. Thank you for sharing with a friend. Today on Truman's Town Hall, we have a special guest. Former Mayor Tom McMasters joins us today, and we have a long discussion about a lot of different topics. We talk about the time when Mr. McMasters was mayor in the city of Heber Heights, and we also talk about some of the current events that are happening today in City Hall. Mr. McMasters runs a blog called HuberResidence.org. You can read all of his posts on HuberResidence.org if you are so inclined. Also, HuberResidence.org on Facebook for more information. The podcast gets a little choppy later in the end, toward the end of this podcast, because as he's driving back from New York, I'm here in Texas, so we have a phone interview here, or a phone discussion, and as he's driving back, he's driving through Springfield, goes through what essentially ends up to be the storm that everyone had experienced. On that note, my thoughts and prayers are still with everyone in the Dayton area, and there are a lot of folks stepping up to help out, which is amazing. People are amazing when there is a crisis. There's no place like home. So very proud to be from Heber Heights, very proud to be from the Dayton area today, seeing everyone stepping up to help out during the time of need for so many. So many have been affected. Also, if you are listening to this podcast and you're not a member of Brick City Town Hall, the group we have on Facebook, well, you have to have some sort of affiliation with the Brick City. You work there, you live there, you grew up there, something like that. We want to keep it an exclusive group to discuss city issues. It's mostly a political page where we discuss government issues. So we have Brick City Town Hall, and we have Truman's Town Hall, the podcast. Hopefully, when I'm back there in June, we'll have events. What? Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice to have some type of an event at a local establishment? Maybe a debate, maybe a discussion, maybe something like, you have a panel and then questions are asked from the audience. I think something like that. It's actually pretty big. There are a lot of different speakers that travel around and like to discuss different issues that folks are facing throughout government. So I think something like that will happen, and I just need to get back home to make it happen. So I think that will be fun to do, and hopefully set up some type of a live podcasting event, things of that sort. But anyway, that's upcoming soon. Now let's go to the conversation I had with former Mayor of Heber Heights, Tom McMasters. Thanks again for listening. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here with former Mayor of the city of Heber Heights, Tom McMasters. Sir, welcome to Truman's Town Hall. Thanks for doing the podcast.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
All right, so just to give the listeners a little background, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, family, background, history, all that good stuff.
Yeah, certainly. And as most people know, I was the former mayor of Heber Heights. Served one term over there. Before that, I was active duty Air Force. Retired from the Air Force in 2009. Married to Marilyn, and we have 5 kids. Thomas is the oldest. He's 21 now. He goes all the way down to Eliza, who's 10.
Nice.
Grew up around Buffalo, New York. Joined the Air Force in 1989. Been out of the house since that time, but my parents are still in the same house that they bought in 1969 with the same telephone number.
Wow.
So that makes it easy.
That is good. So,
I'm traveling back now, played golf with the dad over the weekend, so we're doing good.
Good deal. So y'all had a good Memorial Day weekend then?
Yeah, certainly did. This morning we got up and my dad had me join the Legion. We were trying to figure it out maybe 25 years ago while I was still active duty, and Post 527 was out there this morning at 7 for breakfast and 8 o'clock for the first memorial service, but I only stuck around for one. They did 4.
Wow.
And then the parade, and then that, but I went and played golf with a brother.
Good deal. Would you shoot? I know for those that I'm terrible at golf, but you pulled us through. We played at the Warrior Classic, their golf tournament, so that was pretty fun. Would you shoot today?
Today with a 9 on 15, I shot 47.
Wow.
So I actually shot 40 on the front. I thought I was going to get my first 30 score this season, but didn't quite make it. But I hit the ball good. Hit a couple good shots. Just for my birdies, or for my 10-foot or less birdies.
Yeah, golf's frustrating.
Yeah, when you can't putt, you can't score.
So yeah, that's true. Let's talk a little bit about when you were mayor of Huber Heights. Go ahead and let us know your service period as mayor, and then just tell us a little bit of what you experienced as mayor. I think folks would be interested to hear about that.
Sure. 2014 came in January 1st and left December 31st, 2017. One term. I chose not to run for the second term. It's a big commitment with a big amount of time. You know, I just decided that didn't need to really run. Didn't feel I could make another 4-year commitment, at
Right.
least a year out. Unfortunately, the whole thing is kind of messed up because it's really a 5-year commitment. What's happened to file so early in the year? So
Right.
I mean, you have to file in February to take office the next January. So you really have to make a 5-year commitment in order to run. So I think if I were changing things, I would try to fix that a little bit so you could decide, like the school board. You know, you don't have to decide the school board till September, I think. So I think that's a little better of a system. I wish the state would do something more, move the primaries up into maybe August, and then after the primaries in August, run into November. I think that'd be a lot better system.
Yeah.
For that. You know, the funny part about that is I actually to go to school board meetings before I got out. Actually, a year before I started getting out of the service. But then, and that had some things to think about there too, because they had gotten the levy to build the schools, but they were having trouble financially to pay their bills. Well, that's a whole nother situation. We won't get into that. But soon after that, I started going into the council meetings, and I'd go into council meetings. First thing that caught my attention was all the emergency legislation,
Right.
which I thought was funny. There, and then they had the emergency legislation to start the Aquatic Center. And the Aquatic Center was really one of the first things. I had been going to a couple council meetings before that and thinking I was going to pay attention to council. And then on Friday, they published the agenda for the Monday meeting, and that was the first time that we'd ever seen anything about the Aquatic Center. And they had, and I forget what the number was, but a decent amount of money that they were going to spend on Monday in order to get the Aquatic Center going. And this was the first indication at all any citizens had that was going to go on. So I had actually written a thing and got up and talked about my ideas on Aquatic Center, having no idea what they were going to talk about, because at that time the Rita heads had really no information either. Right? So you just had, we're going to have an Aquatic Center, we're going to pass it on Monday, and we're going to spend this amount of money. And they actually told us that it was going to be up next to the Y. So I talked about, well, why does it need to be by the Y? Why are we spending it now? Why haven't we had any public input on what it was going on? So that was my first foray into getting into talking to council. And that even turned out worse because that first night they pretty much told us what it was going to be, and that's how it turned out. They told us who the architect was going to be, where it was going to be, like that. And then when I got up to speak, they say stuff, well, we haven't decided anything yet. I mean, we're going to have public hearings eventually, and people will give their input. But of course, everything was already decided before that. I found that kind of dissatisfying, or not satisfying. Right?
So,
but
go ahead.
Okay,
yep.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask. So
the other thing.
So you were talking about everything was decided. How do you form that? I mean, how do you understand that everything was already decided? You just believe that, or you think that? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, if you go in there, they brought in the architect that, even though they had open competition for architect after that, they ended up getting, right? They had the Ken Conaway was in there, and he ended up managing the building of it, right? So that was all decided, where it was going to be and the Y was going to manage it at the end when it was done. All that stuff was not announced as it was set, but all these people were the players that were bringing the Aquatic Center to us, and those are the people that ended up getting all the work.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So the only thing that wasn't was which company was actually going to do the construction, but all the other stuff was pretty much decided. That was announced as a $6 million project, and it should have been a $6 million project if you base it on Tip City, because we built essentially the same project as Tip City did without the lazy river in it, and they spent about $4 million, and we did it 3 years later using the same architect, and the architect used the same design. And so they announced it as a $6 million project, and that $6 million when they announced it was supposed to include the soccer field and some of the other stuff. So we ended up
Tip City used the same. Tip City used the same design, or Huber Heights used the same design as Tip City. However, theirs only cost $4 million. And then I say we, but the city of Huber Heights came in at $6 million. What was the gap in years between the two? Is there
there was about 3 years between the two projects, right?
Okay.
At the time so we claimed it was going to be a $6 million project when they announced it.
Right.
It ended up being a $10 million project.
Right.
Right. And so, I mean, things that we use the same architect, but Tip City, when they used that architect, they had a firm fixed price, and that firm fixed price was much less than the 8% we paid them, right? We paid them 8% of the total project, where Tip City, when they negotiated, they had a firm price, and we knew what that price was when they...
It's public record, right?
Right, it was a public, So we called Tip City. How much did they design this for? And what they designed for us was the same thing they designed for Tip City, except that Tip City chose not to build the lazy river. But they had a lazy river designed into it. They just didn't build it.
And they had a lazy river designed into it at the $4 million point, or was it? We just don't know.
No, they cost them $4 million.
Okay.
To build there, so the lazy river would have been, a couple $100,000 more if they had actually built it in.
So essentially, the lazy river over at the Aquatic Center in Huber Heights was a $6 million lazy river.
If that's the way you want to look at it, right?
Right.
But so that got me all up there. So I felt I needed to watch how the city was spending their money.
Mm-hmm.
But then what really got me was when they decided that they were going to tip the Alcor Senior Center over there and the Family Dollar and the Huber Center in order to pay for the Music Center. And that's really got me all riled up and passionate. And I believe, that particular issue was the one that got me elected because it was easy for people to see that. Well, it wasn't easy for people to understand the TIF,